Hello everyone, we are back again with another figure review. Today we are looking at Moff Gideon Dark Trooper armor. This is from season 3 of the Mandalorian TV show. And in the last review we took a look at the Praetorian Guard. And so this is kind of the counterpart to that guard. It's a person he was protecting, so to speak. So we'll get him turned around so you can look at the brief snippet of who Moff Gideon is and what his Dark Trooper armor is as well. And then we will get him out of the packaging and take a look at the figure itself. Alright, we have Gideon out of his packaging, and we'll start by taking a look at his articulation and head and stuff, and then we'll get into the items he came with. So first off, take a look at this face. Now, this face doesn't look quite right, though it is a lot closer to the actor's likeness than the first issue. So there's a side-by-side comparison of the two. This one definitely looks a lot closer than that original release. So taking an even closer look, you can see the detail. He does have kind of a silverish highlight to his hair, making it look more grayish. And then he also is lacking his mustache because it is not the same head sculpt as the original one. It is different, but overall there's not a whole ton to go over with the head, so we'll just hop right into articulation. He is able to go fully around. You can look, and then at the neck he does have another ball joint, looks like, so he is able to look back fairly far, not super far, and he can look down that far. He does have a side-to-side tilt, not very much, but it wiggles. And so he's going to be wearing a helmet, so it's not going to really be too much of an issue that his head doesn't have a whole ton of movement to it, but it's better than him just having none at all. So moving down to the torso, we're going to skip the shoulders real quick and we're going to go straight to the torso. It is a double ball joint. You have a joint at the bottom, and then you have a joint here at the top of the torso. If you watched my Praetorian Guard, who only had the one, this is a lot more movement to it, but it doesn't actually look down that much more than the Praetorian Guard itself. So it more articulation, not more movement. But he is able to go fully around. He is able to go completely around, and then he can do that at the top too. So it allows for more movement to where he's kind of going like that, where he's hunched over to one side, but then he's also bending at the midsection to the other. So it helps more with dynamic posing than having just the single joint, even if it doesn't grant a whole ton more articulation. So we're going to go back up to the shoulders now, and he does have butterfly joint tucked in there, as well as this shoulder is on its own little ring, but it doesn't go, it goes about halfway, same as with most newer shoulder pads. They only go about halfway with the arm before they stop. So not a whole ton of movement. You can go up that far. You can go, if I move the shoulder pad out of the way, he can go back that far. It is hindered by his jetpack. We'll get to that in a moment. But then he can go forward about that far. Not great movement at those shoulders, even with butterfly joints. That's kind of disappointing. Down to the elbow, he does have a single long cut. He gets a little bit better than even the Praetorian did, which had, here for comparison of the deepness of the cut, that Praetorian had a much thinner slice to it, whereas Gideon has this chunky slice And let's see if I can get it side by side for a better comparison. There we go. You can see the thickness of Gideon's cut, and it's also shorter, it looks like. And so it gets a little bit closer in, though. For comparison, Gideon does go just a little bit, just a little bit more than the Praetorian. So again, not the greatest elbow on a Black Series figure so far, but it's not horrible, though that butterfly joint could have been a lot better. But that I could blame on the fact that his chest piece is so bloated. As you can see, I can press in on it. See if I can. That. Yeah, it doesn't give us too much more movement. So yeah, still just not the greatest movement. But we'll go down to the hands now. I'll stop complaining about that. So at the right hand, he has it's actually, is that a ball joint? It is. This is one of the first newer Black Series I have that has a ball joint instead of a hinge and swivel. So his wrists are in fact ball joints instead of them being hinges, which will give you equal movement on both sides. You don't have to worry about it being locked to a single direction. So that I really like. I think of my collection, that is the first Black Series with ball joints. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of ones I've gotten, but I think Dark Trooper Moff Gideon is the first one to have ball joints. So that's a bonus. So we'll go down to the next part. You may hear my cat clattering silverware in the background. So down at the thighs, again, no swivel at the thigh, which they seem to be phasing out with a lot of newer Black Series. Occasionally they'll have one, but only if they use older legs, it's looking like. So he does have this ball joint down there, which is, the camera's on the different side this time. It is a giant ball joint with this huge cut in the middle, which gives him a lot more movement out of that ball joint to go to the sides for kneeling positions and to go back. So back that far. It is hindered by the butt cut. Say that 5 times fast. And the forward isn't the greatest, but because of that cut, his out and in are a lot better than even the Praetorians, which, looking back at the Praetorian, that torso was reuse, as Pyre did have an overlay on his chest. So, but going down to the knees, he does have a single cut knee, can only go back that far, which is a downside of single cut knees, is the double jointed ones are able to go back a lot farther, especially on armored characters. So now we'll go down to the ankle, which is just a standard ankle. Can only go back that far, but forward that far, and then it has a toe pin rocker. So overall, there's upsides and downsides to the figure's articulation, but them putting the ball joints on the hand are going to help a lot when it comes to his accessories, and that alone is making me want to give it a really good score. So, but I will jump to the back because I forgot to take a closer look at this. He does have this jetpack, but just a little wiggling. They do glue it on from the factory, it looks like. I can't remove this, but there's his backpack with the detail on the buttons. And he also has some details on his little badge there and some paint there. Not a whole ton of minute detail, just little bits of paint here and there, but nothing that makes it like really pop out. Whereas like with the I think it was the Anakin, they actually gave some more paint apps to it to actually make certain things pop. But So just for a figure as a figure, it's not the greatest, but for the likeness from the show, it does capture that likeness, especially when we put on his helmet. We're going to take a look at his accessories now. First off, he comes with his helmet with these horns on it, which I don't know if in the show it was supposed to, but it looks a lot like a Mandalorian helmet. So, but it does have those horns on it, the top of it. Then go down to the visor, which is painted a different color than the paint on the sides. The middle is like this shiny gloss, whereas the cheeks are just this flat red. But when it goes on the figure, that visor matches the inside of his cape, and then the cheek matches the kind of shoulder pads and the belt itself. So while the helmet alone, it doesn't match, it does match the rest of the figure, which is really nice to see when they do that. So next, we're going to take a look at his blaster. He did have this holster, which we'll take a closer look at once we look at his blaster. It is the exact same blaster that came with the old Moff Gideon. Here's a side-by-side comparison. The exact same sculpt, exact same mold. The newer one is a bit shinier, whereas the older one was that more matte black plastic. So he does have this holster on his side, which is different. His belt is different from the old Gideon, as that one, for comparison, was just a waist cape with the holster attached to it. Where this one, it is just the belt itself is kind of a separate piece. It's not really attached to anything else. I was checking to make sure it wasn't attached to that, but it does look, yeah, so it's attached to his whole lower half. All right, so it does go in his holster. The holster is a little big and loose, so it does have the strap to go over it. And test, see, will it fall out? Nope, it passed the shake test. Carpet monster won't eat it if you have it clasped. So there it is in his holster. Not the coolest blaster, but it's his. Alright, next we'll take a look at his collapsed electro staff. So it's just this little tiny handle with a little bit of silver and black paint. That's it. And it can go in his hand. Hands are a little tight for it, which will be good for not dropping, but he is able to hold it well. And as far as I could find, there was not any attachment. I was hoping that they would have a loop on the back of his belt, like what they had with Darth Malik, but unfortunately they do not. He just has to hold it or it goes in the bin. Next, he does have his electro staff. When it's extended, this long thing, it is taller than him as a figure, even with the helmet on. Stand him a little bit straighter. And so it's just a little bit taller. Not a whole ton, but it does match fairly well. He can hold it and kind of use it as a leaning stick. And so it, like the other one, does not have a whole ton of paint detail, but he is able to hold it fairly tight, and you can push on it and it's going to move the figure rather than going through his hand. So there he is holding that staff. And then the staff actually has this electrical piece for it being shocked, which is removable. It is just a little clip at the bottom. So if we can get on camera. It is just that little clip right there that you just take, put over wherever you want to have it, which it was the top, but you could put it wherever you want. It's your item. You can stick it on the bottom, get it wrapped around, and there he has his staff all electrified. He's ready to go toe-to-toe with Mando. As you can see, because that head doesn't have a whole ton of movement to its articulation, he was looking down. Getting him to look up, he can with the helmet, but as you can probably see, his chin sticks out through that little cut there, which it's just a problem with helmeted figures, is the skin will show underneath. That's why I actually prefer non-removable helmets. So he fell over and lost his electrical staff part. I probably will just end up gluing it to it, or you could even try what I'm trying now, clipping it to that top part. It kind of works. But there you have it. There is Moff Gideon in his Dark Trooper armor. Now this one, I am going to start doing gripes with figures just because this one has a lot of them for me. First off, you could probably see it now, the staff isn't long enough for him to have the handle and have it at his side, which is unfortunate. And also, the shoulders are very disappointing. I feel like they could have tightened that chest armor and slimmed it a little bit so he could have gotten more movement out of those butterfly joints, which is really unfortunate. But for the screen effect, I would say he does a good job, or this figure does a good job of representing the character from the show. Here he is with that Praetorian Guard. Had to adjust it so it wouldn't fall over. And then here he is with the Imperial Super Commando. As you can see, using that staff, he is able to stand on his own fairly well. He can lean against his electro staff. Here he is side by side with the other two. They are raised up on a stand, so we will also throw him on a stand real quick. There you go. Quick update, here he is with the Glavis Ring-Ruled Mandalorian, or just the Mines of Mandalore with the soft cape Mandalorian. And even with those poor butterfly joints, he is able to grasp his staff well to get into action poses. I forgot to mention that in the middle of the video, but here's a quick tie-in. So that is Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, and here is OG Gideon, which he did survive the assassination attempt by the newer one. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and hope this video was informational, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.